Devotee has surrendered her confession of material entanglement and her desire to gain release. Her questions to Lord Kapila are very interesting for persons who are actually trying to get liberation from material entanglement and attain the perfectional stage of human life. Unless one is interested in understanding his spiritual life or his constitutional position, unless he also feels inconvenience in material existence, his human form of life is spoiled. One who does not care for these transcendental necessities of life and simply engages like an animal in eating, sleeping, fearing and mating has spoiled his life. Lord Kapila was very much satisfied by his mother's questions because the answers stimulate one's desire for liberation from the conditional life of material existence. Such questions are called apavarga vardhanam. Those who have actual spiritual interest are called sat or devotees. Satam prasangat. Sat means that which eternally exists, and asat means that which is not eternal. Unless one is situated on the spiritual platform, he is not sat, he is asat. That asat stands on a platform which will not exist, but anyone who stands on the spiritual platform will exist eternally. As spirit soul, everyone exists eternally, but the asat has accepted the material world as its shelter, and therefore he is full of anxiety. Asat grahan, the incompatible situation of the spirit soul who has the false idea of enjoying matter, is a cause of souls being asat. Actually, the spirit soul is not asat. As soon as one is conscious of this fact and takes to Krishna consciousness, he becomes sat. Satam gatihi, the path of the eternal, is very interesting to the persons who are after liberation, and His Lordship Kapila began to speak about that path. So in this chapter we are hearing about the discussion between Lord Kapila and his mother Devhuti. And Maitra Rishi is saying that after hearing his mother's uncontaminated desire for transcendental realization, the Lord thanked her within himself for her questions. And thus, his face smiling, he explained the path of transcendentalists who are interested in self-realization. So it is mentioned that when the hearer is qualified, the listener is qualified, and when the speaker is also qualified, then the topics, the transcendental topics, the topics which is relation with the Supreme Lord, they become very nectarian. And one can, just like here it says, he explained the path of transcendentalist. Otherwise, if even one of them is disqualified, the whole meaning is lost. Prabhupada many places criticized the professional reciters. They may not be qualified speakers, and many times the hearers also have ulterior motive behind hearing the Bhagavatam. So here we see Devhuti has surrendered with her confession of material entanglement and her desire to gain release. This is one of the qualifications of a bona fide listener. One should feel some kind of incompatibility in this material existence. A sense that we are entangled. Many times people are not even aware of it. They don't realize it. And because they don't realize it, there is no question of desire for getting released. Her questions for Lord Kapila are very interesting for persons who are actually trying to get liberation from material entanglement and gain the perfectional stage of human life. This is the beauty of Bhagavatam. There is one article, Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers. In fact, there's a book now. So, generally, Prabhupada mentions that world is full of questions and answers. Everyone is busy asking questions and seeking answers. But to ask the right questions and get bona fide authorized answers, it's not easy. And we conditioned soul can't even ask that question, forget about getting the answer. So here we are seeing that she's asking wonderful questions, and when people like us, conditioned soul, hear such question and answer, such discussion between exalted devotees, our path for liberation also opens. These questions are very interesting for persons who are actually trying to gain liberation from material entanglement and attain the perfectional stage of human life. Unless one is interested in understanding his spiritual life or his constitutional position, and unless he also feels inconvenience in material existence, his human form of life is spoiled. We all have heard that how our thoughts lead to feelings, and how our feelings lead to action. We use this quite often in our presentations. Sow a thought, reap a word. Sow a word, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character. Sow a character, reap your destiny. So everyone has realized, in fact, the karmis have also realized that the building blocks are our thoughts. And there are many, many books written on positive thinking and how we can change our thoughts and thereby change our destiny. But Bhagavatam gives us a much deeper understanding of this concept. We are actually not in control of our thoughts. What thoughts pop in our mind next moment, actually we are not in control. Suddenly the thought arises in our mind and we act. So what is the basis of this thought? How does the thoughts arise? From Bhagavatam we get an understanding. These thoughts, the basis are the conception of life what we have. Predominantly speaking, we can have bodily concept of life or material conception of life, or we can have spiritual conception of life. Based on these conceptions of the life, just like Krishna also says, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha. These gunas, when we are in material conception, overpowered by the material modes, gunai karmani sarvashaha, we are, so to say, forced, the impulses push us to act in a particular way. Gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manya. We think that actually we are the doer. Actually the modes which are influencing us based on the conception of life are, so to say, triggering different kinds of thoughts, different kinds of impulses, and we helplessly are acting based on those impulses. So when we are in bodily concept of life or material concept of life, naturally the thoughts would be of, I am the body, and since our natural desire is to seek happiness, anandamayo bhyasat, I am the body, so the only definition of pleasure is to seek happiness through our senses or sense gratification. And since the bottom line, the common denominator in all our lives is we all seek happiness, everyone is engaged in different activities. Ultimately, it's to seek happiness. So naturally, in the bodily concept of life, sense gratification becomes rampant. That becomes the goal of life. Eat, drink and be merry. That becomes the philosophy of life. And invariably the soul comes under the clutches of kama, more sense gratification. Krodha, and when sense gratification is obstructed or is not fulfilled because you cannot get whatever you want, so then krodha comes. Frustration comes, anger comes, krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammoha smriti vibrama, buddhi nasho. So one gets into that negative spiral. From the bodily concept, sense gratification, not necessarily what you desire will be met. So frustration comes, one gets caught in this whirlpool of frustration, anger, unlimited desires. Another symptom of this bodily concept of life is we will hanker for name, fame, adoration, puja, pratishtha, labha. Our thoughts would trigger us to act in ways whereby we will seek name, fame and adoration. Actually, if you see this description, everyone in this world is under the clutches of this bodily concept of life. That's why everyone wants to be famous, wants to gratify the senses. The whole advancement is how we can titillate our senses more and more in much more gorgeous way, much more elaborate ways, much more sophisticated ways. And here we have an understanding which devotee is explaining, who is interested in self-realization, in spiritual concept of life, in transcendental realization. The symptom of this transcendentalist or those who are interested in self-realization is they understand that we are the soul, aham brahmasmi. And this soul is now entangled in this material existence, caught in this cycle of birth and death, punarapi janma, punarapi marna. Just like a fish outside water, no matter what we give to that fish, no matter what arrangements we make for the fish to be happy, it cannot be happy. Because that is not its original habitat. That's not what it's meant to be. So we as living beings, spiritual sparks, mamaiva amsho jiva loke, are meant to be in association of Krishna, serving Krishna in the spiritual world. That is our constitutional position. And here in this material world, engaged in sense gratification, we will get frustrated. And bahunam janmanam ante, after many lifetimes, one will realize, although many people are getting frustrated, but they don't have a clue as to what is the solution. That's why Prabhupada says, punas charvita charvanam, chewing the chewed. Although there is no taste, still they have no clue of a higher existence. So here Prabhupada says, one who does not care for these transcendental necessities of life, it's a necessity for the soul to be happy, for us to be blissful, for us to get what we are actually looking for, that is happiness. The soul has a necessity of transcendental life. But unfortunately, if one simply engages like an animal in eating, sleeping, fearing and mating, he has spoiled his life. Lord Kapila is very much satisfied by his mother's questions because the answer stimulates one's desire for liberation from the conditional life of material existence. Now I was telling about how perfect questions, perfect answers. We had no clue that we are in material existence. We were also busy making plans for sense gratification. If we look back, just few years back, before we came in touch with Prabhupada and his books, we also were very much had our own plans of life. No clue of anything higher in life. So what happens is when we hear such conversation, nashta prayesho bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya, It stimulates one's desire for liberation from conditional life. We actually had no desire. Sometimes people ask, Swamiji, how did you come to Krishna consciousness? How did you join the temple? Sometimes, deep within we take the credit, yeah, we were smart enough to understand and figure out, yes, this is the goal of life. I read book and I understood that this is the purpose of life. Actually, that's not the case. When we read the pure words, Prabhupada's purports, then the desire got triggered. Stimulates one's desire for liberation from conditional life of material existence. Such questions are called apavarga vardhanam. So Prabhupada also says this material existence is called pavarga. And spiritual existence, spiritual life is called apavarga vardhanam. Vardhanam means to increase. Apavarga, that which nullifies pavarga. Pavarga is pa means parishrama. Everyone in this material world is working very, very hard. In fact, compared to what man was working 10 years back or 20 years back or 30 years back, we see people are working much harder. Although on one side we have modern means of communication, transportation and so much advancement, what used to take months, now you can do it in days. What used to take days, now you can do it in minutes. I remember when I was in college, so we had to, parents expect that you call. And those days, STDs were there, STD call. And STD was not so easily available. So I remember if I have to make a call to my parents back home, they were staying in a place just 200 kilometers from Kurukshetra. So I would travel about 4.5 kilometers to make that STD call, STD booth. And I would go early in the morning before 6 a.m. Just to make the call, would get up early. Anyone knows why? Why before 6 a.m.? Because there was pulse, In the morning time, every 8 seconds is one pulse. So that means if one pulse is 1 rupee, so 8 seconds is equal to. Between 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., it was half. 16 seconds is equal to 1 pulse. 4 seconds is 1 pulse. So it becomes double the rate. And the peak time, that is after 9 a.m. when the office is open, 2 seconds is equal to 1 pulse. And when you go all the way before 6 o'clock, the line will be there, people standing. Because everyone wants to make call before 6 o'clock. And once the call gets started, your heartbeat also starts. Because every pulse, tuck, tuck, it's like counter is on. You can see that thing, 2 rupees, 4 rupees, 5 rupees. Theek hai, acha, ho gaya, 5 rupees, 6 rupees. And today you see the liberty, people don't even realize that they're making an international call. You don't have to travel to make a call. So in one sense, we have saved that time. If you look really, this is just one crude example. Like that, there's so many things. If you have to print something, a book, I remember 92, 93, if you have to just make a color print of the book just to see how the colors will come like, it was a very elaborate process. Just to take a print and to see how the colors it would cost 4,000 rupees in those days. They actually would make the plates. They actually would do an offset printing in a smaller this thing. And then you can, be very confident, this is what I'm going to get. And for DTP, practically they used to cut the tracing paper and paste it on the sheet and then make the plates. Very tedious process. If you have to print a book, means it's like a big project. But now we see, copy paste, Control C, Control V, Word to Corel Draw to this thing, and you can immediately get the PDF file, go to the printer, it gets printed, and you want to print 40 books, in next 4 hours you can print a book. So on one side we see that how we have advanced, which is meant to save time, our time, and that time we can use in much better ways. But unfortunately in today, this is the meaning of Maya or illusion. Although we have advanced, although we have come up with gadgets which can potentially save us time, we are much more entangled, much more busier. A common problem which people face when we preach on Sundays also and this thing, invariably when we meet people, you've not been able to come. Swamiji, I want to come, but can't come. You can make out literally, it's not that they don't have a desire, but they can't come, they're entangled, so busy. One person says, Swamiji, only one day we get. And that also, we have to buy the groceries, we have to go to the market, we have to do these things. So this is the meaning of the illusion, the entanglement. So, parishrama, pa. Va means pa means, Prabhupada says, fena. Just like when you see the horses running, when they run for a long distance, you see the froth in their mouth, fena. And then bha. Bha stands for bhaya. Actually, everyone is fearful. They may not express, you may not see it visible on their faces, but even people who are very comfortably placed in their companies. I was speaking to my brother. He is working in a big bank, and so just a few months back, the bank for the first time in history laid off a lot of employees. And right from senior level employees to this thing. So I asked him, how was the situation then? Was everyone in anxiety? So he said, for sure, nobody was sure who will be called by the boss, the respective boss, because from the top the order came, this much has to cut. And this was happening over a period of 4 months. And when a person would enter the office, he was not sure what's going to happen that day. He literally, any phone will ring, mere office mein aana, person's heartbeat will increase. And sometimes it can be very ruthless. A person is told that, sorry, you can't continue. The company is going through a rough phase. So, bhaya, pa, pha, bha, and va. Vyarth. Vyarth means it is shram eva hi kevalam. Ultimately, we see all what we are trying to accomplish, all what we are doing, it is vyarth from spiritual perspective, from Atma perspective. It's like the children playing and then making castles out of sand. The parents, after some time, they says, "Bahut ho gaya. Enough. Now come back home." Because it's vyarth. All that, just a wave will come and all what they have painstakingly created will be wiped away. And finally, pavarga. Mrityu. Ultimately it culminates in death. So dharmasya hi apavargasya, or apavarga vardhanam, means these devotional activities or spiritual activities or transcendental realization which devotee is interested in is apavarga vardhanam. It actually nullifies pavarga. Sometimes people wonder, devotees, they don't work very hard. Prabhupada gives example many times. But still, the temples are there, Krishna has blessed them with all the resources. Prabhupada says there are so many vehicles going out daily for book distribution. Not necessarily devotees are working hard like the people outside, but still Krishna is supplying. Those who have actual spiritual interest are called Sat or devotees, Satam Prasangat. Sat means that which exists eternally. And Asat means that which is not eternal. Unless one is situated on the spiritual platform, he is not Sat, he is Asat. One time there was a person, he used to sell hats, hat seller. So he was having a bundle of hats and was passing through a village. He walked for quite some time and then he became tired. It was quite hot, summer days. And then he decided, let me take rest underneath a tree. And as soon as he sat down, because he was tired, he fell asleep. And all the hats what he had in a bundle was kept next to him. And suddenly the monkeys from the tree, they came down and each one of them picked up a hat and climbed the tree. So when he woke up, first thing he saw, where's the bundle of hats? So he was very surprised, where's the bundle of hats? And then he looks up, all the monkeys all over the tree sitting with the hats on their heads. So then this person somehow remembered these monkeys, they imitate. So he started scratching his head. So the monkeys also started scratching his head. And after scratching his head for a while, he took the hat, he also had a hat, and threw it on the floor. And all the monkeys, after scratching that, threw all the hat on the floor. So all the hats came down. It was raining hats. So he was very happy. Quickly he picked up the hats and went off. And then he came back home and he was very happy that, how he cheated the monkeys and finally got his hats back. He was very happy with that. And he would tell all his family members, and years rolled by. His grandson, when he was young, he would tell this story very proudly. This is what I did, and see this, how the monkeys actually took all the hats and how I actually tricked them and I got all the hats back. So grandson also would hear and, would say, yeah, grandfather was so intelligent. So one day it so happened, now it was the time this grandson became a hat seller. And he also actually was passing through a village one day. He also became tired, to cut the story short. He also slept. He also had a bundle of hat. Monkeys again came. Monkeys also took the hat. And monkeys went and sat on the top of the tree. So when he got up, he was disappointed. But fortunately, he remembered what had happened to his grandfather. What the grandfather had told him. So deep within he was quite happy. Ab dekho kya hoga. So he did like this. So the monkeys also did like this. Then he threw his hat down. None of the monkeys threw his hat down. And one of the big monkeys came down with the hat on his head and slapped him. And he said, do you think only you have grandfather? So, the reason why I thought I'll share this story is, here we have examples of great devotees like Devotee, who is interested in transcendental realization and is asking wonderful questions from Kapila Dev. Many times as devotees, like we hear from Prabhupada that how Raghunath Das Goswami was eating every alternate day. So Prabhupada mentions about two things. One is Anukaran and one is Anucharan. Anucharan means following in the footsteps. If we blindly imitate these great devotees, Prabhupada also explained that how many times followers of Lord Shiva, they drink ganja and things like that, saying that Lord Shiva also took. Or many devotees of Krishna might dance Rasa Leela because Krishna also danced. So Anukaran means you imitate the activities of great devotees. And Anucharan means to follow in the footsteps. So here we are very fortunate, we are learning what kind of questions these great devotees are asking, what kind of answers great devotees are giving in response to such questions. And when we relish these kind of conversations and try to follow in the footsteps, not imitate, try to follow in the footsteps of these great devotees, our path for liberation also opens. What is called here is apavarga vardhanam. That also happens in our case. So we are very, very blessed, very, very fortunate that we have an opportunity to hear this kind of conversations daily. It's a big luxury. For many devotees who are even practicing Krishna consciousness back home, not necessarily they'll get time to hear Bhagavatam or read Prabhupada books daily. Some people who are very sincere, at best they are able to complete their 16 rounds. Even that sometimes becomes a challenge. So all of us, we get a very good opportunity every day, every morning we come, the whole morning program. And so we should realize our good fortune. Be grateful to Prabhupada for giving us this, so to say, good fortune, and steadily progress on this path. We'll stop here. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.